Hello and welcome to Qtr Time podcast in partnership with Lovell Netball. I'm Lucy G.
And I'm Lucy P. And we're here to bring you all the netball goodness you never knew you needed. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the final episode of Season 3 of Qtr Time podcast. Well, Luce, the 2023 Netball Super League season is done and dusted, and what a finals week it was. It was just incredible, wasn't it?
Very much so.
It was indeed. But before we get stuck into the episode, what were your thoughts on the finals then, Luce?
I just thought it was brilliant. Like, two absolutely cracking games. I think the vibes in the arena were top level. I loved the saxophonist. Is that what you call him? Saxophonist? I thought she was amazing. And the little flash dance, the whole thing, the whole package was just really, really incredible. And we had some great netball to boot as well. So what more can you ask for?
Exactly. I think obviously it was a bit of a shame that the results themselves weren't a bit closer, but I think the quality of the netball that we saw, particularly in that final, was just outstanding. So, Luce, what is coming up on the show today?
So in honour of the Netball Super League finals, we're going to do things a little bit differently for this episode. Today, we're going to run through a bit of netball news from this week, followed by the results from the semis and the finals. Then we're going to be joined by everyone's favourite netball guru. It's Tamsin Greenway. We're going to take a detailed look at how all 10 teams have performed in 2023 and really dive into those crucial final matches to look at some of the key talking points before taking a wider look at the league as a whole and what developments and changes that Tamsin thinks we should be making. So brace yourself, folks. It's going to be good.
Wow, this is going to be a big one. And just then, before we get into our results and summaries, some of that netball news that we mentioned. So firstly, we had the Wales squad announced. Very interesting. Lots of Super League players represented. No Betsy Creek in the side. But aside from that, I would say probably fairly predictable and stable from what we've seen from Wales in recent years. And good to see some of the youngsters getting an opportunity as well. And the Tonga squad announced. Very exciting, isn't it, Luce?
Very exciting indeed. I mean, look at some of the names in there. You've got Gerard, who's come out of retirement, played, however many caps for Australia. I can't remember off the top of my head, like an absolute legend of the game. Speaking of legends, Qtr in the squad. Like, you've got some other names who are currently playing in SSN at the moment as well. Mate, I am so excited to see them.
Excited, and also thinking that probably they're going to be the dark horse of the competition.
100% guaranteed.
In other news, April Brandley has announced her retirement at the end of this season, and Gina Crampton has revealed she's going to take a year out to spend time with her partner in New York next year. And finally, Laura Malcolm is leaving the Tactics. She'll be coming back, presumably to the Netball Super League, but not sure which team yet. Obviously, the Super League signing window is now open, so players' phones are probably buzzing the whole time at the moment. And last thing, actually, before we move on, just the Netball Australia debacle, I would call it probably. Do you want to give us a quick rundown, Luce, on what's going on over there?
I mean, this is absolute madness. Like, every day I'm sort of reading new articles and my jaw's kind of hitting the floor. I can't believe that this is actually happening. So for anyone who's been living under a rock, basically Netball Australia are refusing to announce the Australia World Cup squad going to Cape Town in July until the players have all signed a collective player agreement. So basically like their contract essentially. And it kind of feels like, well, there's certainly been some media that are saying that the players are kind of being held to ransom, really. It's very, very public. It's very messy. We saw a statement from the Australia Netball Players Association that came out this week as well. And probably some conflicting statements between what Netball Australia have said and then what they've said. So it's messy. I don't know how else to describe it. A hot mess.
Yeah, exactly. A hot mess. And no one seems to really know exactly what's going on or how it's going to be resolved. And they need to resolve it quickly. I mean, these players can't be left in limbo, indefinitely. And surely at a certain point, they have to submit the squad to the World Cup anyway. Like, it's a really bad scene and everything's very public. And so I think, they really need to get it resolved sooner rather than later, just for player welfare and also kind of the fan perspective as well. Like, it's just not nice to see your national governing body effectively like tearing itself away from the players and causing such a massive rift, like in a World Cup year. It's awful.
Yeah, and I think, for the world number one ranked nation, like, there's a lot of talk about SSN and Netball Australia being like fully professional. I think it sort of raises a lot of questions as the Netball Super League goes on its professionalisation journey as well, about what can we learn from what they're not doing right overseas. Because we don't, absolutely, we do not want any of this in our journey to professionalisation.
No, it's true. Yeah, it has to be avoided at all costs, this kind of hot mess, as you called it. And just before we move on to our summaries, the England men's team, who are the Thorns, are playing the Jamaican men's team, who are called the Suns, in a series in England. If you didn't know, I don't know why I said that in a weird way, but it's very exciting. And it's, I think, the first time a series like this has taken place in the UK, and it's going to be one game happening in London and two games happening in Nottingham. So very, very exciting. We will put a link to the tickets in our show notes as well.
Yeah, and there's also, for the Nottingham games, there's going to be curtain raiser games as well for the Trailblazers, so the under 25 men's teams, who are going to be playing an all-stars team made up of, as we've heard it, lots of Super League players as well. So there's so much good stuff going on. So definitely go grab your tickets if you can.
Amazing. So moving on to our summaries for the semi-finals of the Netball Super League 2023. So our first semi-final was Pulse versus Storm, with Pulse taking the win 55-42. And it was a convincing victory in the end, with a 17-9 third quarter, 36 deflections for Pulse in this game, with 19 of these belonging to Fumi Fudoju. Who else? And Storm just could not get enough volume to their shooters in this game, and Pulse were simply on a mad one.
19 deflections to one player.
Unbelievable.
That is absolute madness. But yeah, what a cracking game that was. The second semi then was Lightning versus Thunder, with Lightning coming away victorious 65-59. And on paper, Thunder played extremely well in this game. They had 100% shooting from all shooters. Huckle had the same number of turnovers as the entire Lightning team, with 6, and the unforced errors and penalties were pretty much even. But Thunder just lost a bit of focus for, I don't know, 2-3 minutes, and made a few errors in the third quarter. And when you're up against a side that's as classy and as slick as Lightning, you just can't afford to do that. So a real shame for them.
It was a shame, but I do think Lightning played extremely well in that game and were very, very consistent. The finals then on Sunday, first up we had Thunder versus Storm, and Thunder took a big win, 55-38 in this one. Unfortunately for Storm, I don't really think that Thunder ever looked like they were going to lose this game. And Thunder blew the scoreline out with a 20-8 third quarter. Again, that same third quarter is a problem for Storm. And Storm had 17 unforced errors, with 5 of these belonging to Mickey Austin. Thunder, though, got all 12 out on court, and I think they can be really proud of the season they had. Given all the talent they lost last season, they've done exceptionally well, and I don't think they've skipped a beat, really.
No, I could not agree more. It's really dominant display from them. And finally, of course, the grand final. It was Pulse versus Lightning, with Lightning coming away the grand final winners, 57-48. I mean, what an amazing grand final, and an extremely special win for Loughborough Lightning. Pulse, honestly, by half time, I was like, oh, you know what? I actually think they've got this in the bag. They played so well in the first half. But in the second half, Fran Williams really just came into her own. She took home player of the match, ended up with 10 turnovers to her name. I think, as well as Thunder played and as great as their season has gone, and Storm as well, we definitely had the two best teams in the final. And I think Pulse are going to be back with a vengeance next season.
Oh yeah, it was a really good final. It was exactly what you want. And after everything that happened with Lightning last year in their final, I think they really, really deserved this one. And just the scenes afterwards in the Copper Box were amazing. Just all the Lightning players going nuts. It was really well deserved. And they've now won 2 Super League titles, and they'll be probably looking for another one next year. Shame that it wasn't to be for Pulse, but you think about the youth in that side, this is not going to be their last final for sure.
No, not at all. And I think just looking at all the amazing photos from the finals as well, the joy, the unbridled joy in Nat Panigari's face, that for me alone, I'm like, yep, Lightning deserved to win the finals just to make Nat Padagary happy. Like, it was just
amazing.
So good. Loved it. So after the break, we're going to break down the 2023 season for all 10 teams and take a look at the Netball Super League finals a little bit closer with none other than the incredible Tamsin Greenway. Now, Luce, we all know that I'm a bit of a gremlin for new stash. Love me some new stash. And occasionally a new pair of trainers gets released and they are simply a thing of beauty. And this is absolutely the case with the new Net Burner Shield FF from ASICS.
Oh, they are amazing. It makes me think of that meme, you know, just hang it in the Louvre, these trainers. Even if you look past the gorgeous colour, which, I mean, personally, that's what I base all my netball shoe decisions on.
Yep.
But there are a lot of things to love. The shoe is specifically designed for advanced stability and is suitable for both attacking and defensive netballers, and particularly centres, if you're me, in the middle. Mm-hmm. And they will support your feet during those short, sharp changes of direction that your coach is always badgering you to make too. And plus, they're super comfortable, so perfect for your all-day summer tournaments.
And as you lovely listeners of the podcast will know, this season we're proudly partnered with Lovell Netball. So don't forget, you can get 15% off first-time orders of ASICS Net Burner Shield FF trainers, or quite frankly, anything else that takes your fancy at lovellnetball.co.uk by using the code NETPOD15 at the checkout.
Happy shopping, guys. It is an honour to welcome a regular podcast guest, Tamsin Greenway, onto the pod. How are you doing, Tamsin?
Hi, guys. I'm very good, thank you.
So fantastic to have you back on the podcast again this year. So we're looking today at each team in detail. Obviously, we've had the Netball Super League finals. It's all done and dusted for the 2023 season. So we just wanted to take the opportunity to reflect on how all the teams performed and then take a bit of a closer look at the finals before looking at the league as a whole. So before we get stuck in, what were your overall thoughts on the 2023 season?
I thought it was another interesting one. It always is every year. Obviously, there was some standout 7 stars. I think really surprised everyone with their consistency over the season and just how so many of their players stood up and delivered, which was impressive. I don't think there was any surprises in the top 4, but obviously there were some interesting things that happened to each of those teams as they went along that really decided what eventually went on to happen in the final. So yeah, I thought it was an interesting one. I think it's a shame that we've still got this mass disparity with the top 4 really dominating and the bottom 6 not really coming close. I think we only saw 1 scalp this season, and that's got to be addressed.
Yeah, and that was in the last round, wasn't it? In round 20. So
absolutely.
It's definitely something to be considered. And we will come on to that a little bit later in the conversation, because I know we'd love to hear you expand a bit more on what you said in commentary on Sunday. But taking a closer look at all of our teams, so finishing in 10th place was the Celtic Dragons, and they ended the season on 2 wins and 1 draw, which is just slightly behind their 3 wins from last year. And they have consistently been near the bottom of the Netball Super League table in recent years. Also had a very difficult season with injuries to key players, particularly in that shooting end, as well as the shock departure of Danny Titmus-Morris in round 12. So in your opinion, what do you think Dragons need to do to make headway in climbing up the Netball Super League table?
Yeah, look, I think with all those sides, those sort of towards the bottom, they've got to get some stability in recruitment. Like a big thing for them this year was their shooters, which was a nightmare with obviously Georgia Rowe not being fit for most of the season, and then Chelsea Beard as well. I think, longer term, I thought Danny Titmus-Morris was building something really quite good, and you've got to give people time. I'm so fed up of everybody thinking you wave a magic wand in performance and it all gets better. Just doesn't happen like that. So I think they've now got to go for some stability in whatever that coaching setup looks like, and some of that investment in some of their younger players so they don't have so many chops and changes, because I think we've seen a lot of personnel coming in and out of that franchise for the last few years, and keeping players together will be crucial moving forward, making sure they've got a key target shooter that can last out the season, and of course making sure they have a regular coaching setup as well.
Yeah, I think that consistency is just so key because I mean, it was almost a completely new team last year. And then, like you said, you sort of felt that there was potential for some of those connections to really start to blossom. But I think they're still probably missing a sort of key player in each third that would really help to just elevate the team and bring them up to some of those other levels. But obviously it's difficult in terms of recruitment and getting people to move and that sort of thing as well. But I'd like to see a bit more from Dragons, I think, in the coming years. And obviously we'll wait to see what happens with their coaching setup next year. And next up, we had obviously Team Bath finishing in 9th place. And I think given the number of big names that departed Bath in 2022, it was always going to be a rebuilding year for them. I think nobody was under any illusions that they were probably going to finish near the bottom this year. They did manage to get 4 wins on the board, but they also had the worst goal difference in the league with minus 233. And I think the difficult thing for Bath this season was just finding that right combination, particularly in the shooting end. There were a lot of personnel changes within games, which meant they never really found a good rhythm. So what were your thoughts on the management of team changes at Bath this year?
Look, every coach has got to coach how they want to. The way I always look at it is when you're a player, how did you like to be coached? And if you never know your role in the side, or you fear every time you make an error, you're going to be dragged off, or you're constantly being rotated around with different people, it's very hard to keep building that word. We keep talking about consistency. And that's not just a physical thing in terms of your connection with a set person. It's also a mental thing. Like that takes a toll on you all the time. The reality is everyone in this league is playing because they want to play. So once you have a hierarchy and you know your role in the side, you understand. So in my early days, I was an impact player and I became a really good impact player until I earned the starting spot. I think one of the big issues at the moment, and I keep going on about it, is when you're coaching, are you coaching the problem or are you just changing personnel? And they're two completely different things. And I think for Bath, one of the big issues will be, well, what does even next year look like? So if you retain some of those players, like have you worked out your combinations? Have you seen what's going on? And you know, have you really built somebody in? So I know I made a comment earlier in the season about Sophie Kelly. Yes, she's not the finished article yet, but if you've given her a whole season under the belt where she's starting and playing every single week, she'll become a bigger, quicker finished article than she will be if you keep taking her on and off the court. It is hard to manage things. And like I say, every coach has their way of doing things. I just think Bath will probably have to start cementing some stuff at some time, because there's probably only one other club in the league that I would say all of their bench could be starting players in another team, and that was London Pulse. And yet in the final, how many of those bench players did they use? And that's my argument. Like if we're getting to that point where it's not coming on, if you can watch New Zealand win the last World Cup with pretty much the starting 7, I find it quite strange that we feel that there's an equal, not only level in your squad, because there isn't, it just never is. It's also combinations. Like key people change things. But for example, if you change your shooter and your centre and wing attack aren't comfortable feeding them, that's a problem. And I found it quite strange watching some of the decisions that came out of Bath this year. And I think it will be something they'll need to address.
Yeah, and I think, in all honesty, if they're going to keep some players, then they need to definitely keep Jada Pekova. She had an outstanding season and
Absolutely.
She was a clear standout, I think, and has definitely earned her place in the main Roses programme. But when you look at the distribution of Roses across the Netball Super League clubs, understandably, the majority sit in the top 4 or so teams, and it is much harder for the players in the lower ranking or underperforming teams to get noticed. So do you think someone like Pekova in the future may need to seek opportunities elsewhere, for example, like Fran Williams has done, moving to Loughborough Lightning, in order to progress her England career?
Look, the reality is when I look through that list of players in the full-time programme and players in the futures programme, there's a whole heap of them that aren't playing regular Super League netball. And I can't believe that's the same when you look across the board at the Aussie Diamonds or the Kiwis. And I think it's a problem. So the choices you make about the teams you go to are huge. The spread of the players we've got at the moment is quite interesting. Some teams are stacked, some teams aren't. I get everybody wants to win. I get it. But the reality is, you know, you look at Suncorp at the minute and you had Magpies being one of the top teams the other week. You've had... you still have Firebirds that can take a scalp. You can still, you know, those things happen. And yet over here we haven't. So I just don't think the balance is quite right. And absolutely, it's not about young players going to a place they're going to win. It's about young players going to a team where they're going to play and be coached to get better. And I think we've got to start understanding that. So yeah, I know everybody wants to stack their team. I understand that. But actually, is it, players in this signing window, I think, need to be brave about where they go and what they're going to get out of it to actually make them a better player, as well as getting court time.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating actually to see where everyone does end up. I'm predicting a fair amount of shake-up this season, and part of it, as well as like the geographical locations and stuff to consider and traveling to and from training, there is that element of actually who do I want to be coached by, and that's a massive draw. So we'll have to wait and see where people end up. But next up then was Sirens, who finished in 8th, which was the same position as last year, but they had 4 wins compared to last year's 7. However, they were the side with the best goal difference outside of the top 4, meaning that they were closely contesting matches, but they just weren't able to close games out. So how can Sirens look to rectify this in future years and come away with more points on the ladder?
I think Sirens are in that strange position at the minute where they almost perform better against the top teams and worse against the bottom teams. I know that sounds ridiculous, but that is a massive learning curve as well. It's at what point you get not that arrogance, but that just belief that you're going to go out and play to your level and your standard every week. And that comes with experience. It comes through consistency. It comes with understanding your structure and your style. And what you have to remember when you play against some of the teams at the bottom, some of the defense is a bit scrappier, or some of the, things happen that you're not expecting to happen, and so it almost brings down your game. I think they're in that funny stage at the moment where at some point they've got to step up and stand up and deliver. Maybe they need a couple of extra players in there to help them do that have perhaps been out at other teams and can come in and help. But I think Sirens will get to the point that they're frustrated now because actually they want to be doing better, but the recruitment for next year, like I say, with 2 or 3 people, might make a big difference to them as a group.
Yeah, 100%. And actually, we say this in my social league all the time. When you play a better quality team, it makes you play better. And then even if you're like a set standard, when you play a lower standard team, like it just makes you play like poo. It's really bizarre.
You know how I always look at it. Tennis, right? You play against someone who also can't play tennis. The ball's just up in the air all the time, and it's really hard to hit hard, and it's really hard to do whatever. But you play against a really good player who's hitting the shots to you, and you can do it. You can hit it at the same sort of temperament. It's kind of like that in netball. It's weird, like unexpected things happen when you play against a lower level player. So it just changes stuff. It's like that niggly, hassly person that's just on there to obstruct and penalise. It just breaks the flow of the game. But the classy teams step above that. And that's where Sirens haven't got to yet. And they will have to, whether that's personnel in to just bring up that group to the next stage, because they've got all the potential. And I think what's frustrating for them is that they'll have games where they look absolutely brilliant and go toe to toe. Like I was up there for their home game against Pulse, and then where they push them all the way, and then they'll have games where you're like, how did you lose that? And yeah, that's for them to have a good long hard look, because it's not just the coaching that either. That's a mental approach to the game, and players have to learn how to handle that.
Yeah, because the personnel thing is really fascinating, because obviously they've got the likes of Vinkumbo, who was winning them stupid amounts of balls. She was top of the table for intercepts, turnovers. Winning the ball wasn't the issue. It was then taking it through to goal. And admittedly, they did have a fairly big blow in losing Stella Royella, who was incredible for them on the games that we did see. But with that personnel question, do you think it's a case of changing sort of 1 or 2 key positions, maybe in the midcourt and the shooting end, or do you think they need a major shake-up?
I don't think they need a major shake-up, and there's not the players there to do a major shake-up. I think they probably need to add into the mid-court. I think Beth Goodwin's been exceptional this season, but she's not your 6'5" Mary Chollock. So you've got to have the mid-court that can get the ball to her against Afimi Fadoju, and that takes lots of skill and lots of time and lots of effort. And then the goal attack coming in. So Stella Royella was a huge loss for them because she added something different. So, the reality is with Beth in there and Neve in there, they're a really young shooting circle. So Stella brought in some experience, some exposure, some strength in a different way. And yeah, who they get, their recruitment is more key, really, than how many people they get.
Yeah, it could just be sort of 1 or 2 key signings that could really really changed the game, I suppose, for Sirens. But I did think that it was a shame that they lost Stella Ayala, and obviously now for her to be out for the World Cup as well is a real disappointment. And I mean, it feels like the season's been going on for so long, like so much has happened. I feel like I need a full recap on all the injury news and everything. But next up, we had Leeds Rhinos, who didn't get their first win until round 9, which was exactly as you predicted in our first episode before the season, and exactly not what I predicted, which is why you're the expert. And they did start to pick up a lot more towards the end of the season. I think there was kind of patches of brilliance from them, but then also just some absolute clunkers at times where it all just completely fell apart. But given how stacked their squad was, do you think that Rhinos underperformed this season?
Yeah, I think so. It's a case of bringing in lots of different people, but is that the right style? You can't just throw a mix together and expect to get the perfect blend. You've got to work to your strengths with that. They've got some quality people. I think it took them a long time to decide who their 7 was and what that looked like. Of course, they had to play some people out of position, and to be honest, they got over the line with a lot of things with the work of Vicky Osola as well, which, you know, she was blessed that was having to play goalkeeper for most of the back half of the season. So that I just think it's a tough ask in your first year of coaching with a whole different group of players to pull it all together and make it work, because you've got to commit to a style. You know, Thunder are good because for years they play the same way, and that's no disrespect. It's actually brilliant. Like, Thunder pathway players know how to play the Thunder way. You've got this Pulse group now that know how to play the Pulse way because they invested in that pathway. You know, Rhinos have got to start from the beginning of that, and it's not always that easy just bringing in a whole group. So again, the difficulty for them is who they retain and what that looks like, because if you have to start again next year, you're another year behind starting your structure in your way and your style. And that's hard as a coach, because, you know, you're trying to pull players together and you're not even sure what that's going to look like until you've got a group in, but you've got to start somewhere.
Yeah, and obviously we know that Liana Leota was contracted as coach for a 3-year period, so she does have a bit of time to be able to establish like what is the Rhinos way and how she's going to go about setting that up. But do you think there's something to be said around her potential lack of coaching experience? Obviously, other than the specialist coach for the Roses, she doesn't have an awful lot of coaching experience under her belt. Do you think that played a factor into their underperformance this season?
Look, at the end of the day, I have my little rant on Sky the other day because I mean it. There's no support for the coaches in this country. We just keep putting names in there because they've played the game. Like, and that is no disrespect. I was exactly the same in my year 1 at Surrey Storm. It's just there wasn't as much around, and people just remember the good things that you got. Like, we have to start helping coaches understand what it's like to coach a team week in, week out, what the player management's like, what a style is, what a structure is. And it's very different, right? Getting a team of international players that are already at that level in and coaching them to actually upskilling technically and tactically a player to be able to play at the top level. And we are, honestly, I don't think we're doing that well enough across the board at the moment. And I just think we've got to start talking out about it. And it's not to be negative about everybody. We've all been in that position. The same as I'm learning as an international coach. You know, you have to give people time, and we have to have a proper program in place or feeder leagues in place that allow coaches to actually learn on the job and get into these positions. Because at the minute, like I did, and I'm not saying this about anybody else, I put my hand up and went, yeah, I can do that. I had no coaching qualifications. I hadn't coached at that level before. I was coaching schools and at clubs and all the other bits. But I just think we've got to be a bit more realistic. If the game's going to get more money in it and we're excelling in all the players, we've got to start looking after the coaches just as much as we've got to start looking after the umpire, because it's the only way the game's going to get any better.
Yeah, because I mean, the game's only ever going to be as good as the coaches are, realistically. You know, if we constantly work on, oh yeah, we're improving the players, but we don't actually bring the coaches and quite rightly the umpires into it as well, that we're going to hit a ceiling eventually that we're not going to be able to get past.
Remember on that, like, coaches have different strengths. So in rugby, you'll have your overall director, you'll have the head coach, you'll have a forwards coach, a backs coach, you'll have someone just doing the scrum, someone doing the lineup, you'll have 6 analysts sitting up there, and literally in netball you'll have a director of netball. And it's like, brilliant. So you're going to do all those jobs, are you? So what are your strengths? Have you worked with a 17-year-old to get them to be the next best wing attack? Or have you only ever been given a Chelsea Pittman who's gone through that for 20 years? I mean, we have to start being realistic about what people's strengths are and looking at the game holistically. That means money, of course it does, because you've got to pay more people to do more things. But until we can start working on these programs and going, you know, why did X amount of players come out of the Bath programme all those years ago? Well, it was because of Lynn Gunson. So, like, if we're being brutally honest, why is the Thunder pathway so good? Their club structure and the coaches they've got up there working with the talent are excellent. You know, and there's lots of pockets of that happening. But until we start being this brutal and start actually helping coaches develop their game in different areas, it's just not going to change.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think one coach that did have a very successful first year in the player coach role was obviously Jo Tripp. She had an amazing season, her first time as head coach, and she picked up the Coach of the Year award at the finals. And I think in general, Stars were probably the biggest surprise. You alluded to it as well at the start, Tamsin. They finished up on 7 out of 18 wins, so slightly off their target to win half their games, as they lost 5 of the last 6 games of the season. So a few wobbles towards the end. But in terms of Jo, what do you think are the qualities that have made her such an impressive player coach in her inaugural season?
I think she stuck to a structure. She knew how she wanted to play. It helped with her being at the back there because, you know, she's still playing exceptional netball. She was one of the best keepers in the league this year. And they designed that around her style. So that really worked. I think down the other end, Siggy Berger had the best season I've ever seen her play. And I think sometimes it just happens with cultures that you bring in a load of players that had a point to prove. You know, they really did. Like, we let Gabby Marshall go at Mavericks and she went off there and smashed it this year. And sometimes players need a fresh approach, and you need to be kind to players to go and do that, because so much happens at clubs and in the past that actually sometimes they have to go somewhere else, fit a different style and play the way they want to play. Jess Shaw, you know, she was exceptional this year with her connection with Siggy Berger. They actually stuck to pretty much the same sort of starting lineups as well, bar injuries that came in. So, you know, everyone knew their role there as well. And that, I think, was key. And they played simple. They did their job, their role, and played it. What was interesting is, like you say, the back end of the season, they struggled to pick up a win, and they will have to look now. It's a bit like that Sirens thing a few years ago. You come in and surprise some people. There'll be a target next year because the top teams can't afford to lose to them. So they will have to look at where they strengthen to develop their game. And that's the next part. And that's another role for Jo Tripp as a young coach to realise that she's got to do the next job, because now she's got a target on her head.
Yeah, because the first year is often, you know, the breakout year is often much easier than the second year, when you come back and people have got video on you and they've seen what you've done last year, and you've got to kind of reinvent yourself a little bit. But yeah, I thought Stars had a fantastic season, and it was really great to have a sort of almost a bit of a surprise element to that. And it would have been better if they were a bit more in contention for the top 4 in the end, but I think there was still quite a big gap between them. But Mavericks actually did end up obviously in 5th position this year, and they had their best game of the season in round 20, unfortunately, with that truly sensational win against this year's runners-up London Pulse. And Mavs have come in 5th every season since 2018, if you ignore the 2020 cancelled year. And try as they might, they just can't seem to break into that top 4. What is the key to changing this narrative for Mavericks from your perspective?
Look, I think Mavericks needed to be a happier group this year, and they certainly were. I think there was lots of changes that came in place, and there's no disrespect to what went before. It was a place that I think had kind of run its course, with a lot of players that had been there for a long time, and a culture that had probably not changed and reinvented itself, like you said. So that was probably the key focus. And actually, on paper, they probably had a weaker squad player for player than they did in previous years, and still finished 5th. But to break into that top 4, it comes down to the same thing. There's got to be consistency at both ends. You know, having Raz back for the last part of the season was amazing. I think it would have been a different story if she'd been there for some of those other games. Having in or out for certain parts as well was key for them. You also saw what happened to Surrey Storm the minute they lost Proscovia Peace. So, you know, there were some other things that went along the way there. And they also showed what they could do against the London Pulse side, which just gives them the confidence moving into next season. I think it's like any of those teams, the recruitment for next year will be key. Shifting the brand on and deciding what that group want to look like and how they want to play will be key. And Camilla and Becky have got their first year of coaching under their belt at that level, being head coach and assistant coach. And actually, they'd have, just like Jo Tripp, it would have been invaluable for them. So, yeah, although it's not where they want to be at the moment, I think there's going to be different things in place for them that will be huge for them going into the 2024 season.
Yeah, 100%. And obviously, you know, we can't overlook the role that you've played within Mavericks as well as, I can't remember your official title. Was it head of strategic operations or something like that? I mean, how have you found that first year as well?
Yeah, well, I was on 2 days a week, and it was not to be a coaching role. It was to work with Camilla and Becky, which we've done. It was to integrate Saracens into Mavericks, which we've done. Like, everything is now in-house. So all our physio, all our S&C, working closely with the performance side there. I mean, it was to sort the pathway out. And actually, we just changed a load of things for our pathway for next year, which is really exciting. We've got a forum coming up in a couple of weeks where we're going to chat to parents and the clubs. We know it's not working yet. You know, we want to retain players in our pathway and not lose them to other shiny clubs around London. And we want to make sure that we've got players on our pathway that can step up into our senior team. So it was a big ask. I'll be going more hours next year, and I'll be doing more hands-on stuff, and that role again will evolve, and I'm really excited about it because I've missed the hands-on coaching and missed being involved in that part. So that's really exciting for me as well next year.
Yeah, really exciting for us as well. Can't wait for that. That's really great news. And then obviously moving on to fourth place was Surrey Storm. Back in episode 1, you predicted a Storm Thunder final. We went back and checked the receipts, and in fact, it was Lucy P. You were the one who predicted a final. I said Pulse Thunder, so I got about 50%. I'll take half the glory. But in the first 15 games, Storm averaged 64 goals per game. In the 5 games without Praskovia, Peace and Qtr, they averaged 48 goals per game. So there's no doubt, as you say, Tamsin, that losing Peace was a huge blow for them. But that's the nature of elite sport. You know, you can't rely on any one individual to win you games, and numerous teams lost multiple people throughout the season. So do you think that Storm ever had a good enough game plan this season to really challenge for the title? Because I would say they certainly had the talent when you look at the likes of Amy Flanagan, Hannah Knight, Sophie Drakeford-Lewis, Layla Gusketh, etc.
Yeah, look, I would disagree. In our sport, there are some key players that absolutely matter. So, you know, if you take certain people out of certain positions, you are going to suffer for it because it's just the way the game plays. You know, it's not football where you can dribble from defence all the way into attack and score the goal. You have to have key people. And the reality is you need a shooter in this league that can hit up towards those 50 goals a game for you. So I think losing Peace was huge. Should they be criticised for having a one-trick game plan? No, probably not, because they would never have guessed that Praskovia Peace was going to go. And, you know, I would have challenged whether Loughborough could have won the league without Mary Chollock. I'd have challenged whether Thunder could have pushed Loughborough all the way without Lenise Pot-Qtr. And so I think we have to be realistic about that. I think they were starting to be found out, and it would have been interesting to see whether they could have adapted their game, because they did have a couple of, they were a team that were losing to some of the top teams with their full strength as well. But I think with the likes of Amy Flanagan and Layla, they adjusted their defence unit and they started to work. There were still probably a couple of key people missing for me. So when Peace lost, that was huge. And I think there's a couple of other areas where they will need to strengthen, because to be more than a one-trick pony, you do need to have the impact on the bench. And they're probably the one team out of the top 4 that didn't have so many key players that they could add onto the court that would make a massive difference.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. And I think I always find it really interesting because, yeah, it's completely unexpected, but I do wonder whether Frankie should have perhaps been given more court time earlier on in the season, because that's quite a big step up for her then to go from, 5 minutes here and there after having more last season to then suddenly you're the starting shooter. And I wonder whether some of that player management could have been looked at slightly differently. But
well, I do hear what you're saying, but if Thunder had played without Lenise in some of the games, would they have got over the line? Not many people have that, and this is the problem. This is what I'm talking about. Our feeder leagues need to be better, because actually once you get to the top level, you do not have many opportunities to play your second string team. You just don't. So what other opportunities is Frankie Wells getting to make sure that she can just step straight into it? We compare it to Australia, it's so different. They're ready. Ours just aren't getting that other level of exposure, that training environment, the day-to-day coaching that a Suncorp team would have. So I would just challenge that we aren't the same, and that's the biggest problem for me. So no, a lot of those young players aren't ready without you taking a punt for a few seasons and letting them play out there and expect that you're going to lose for a bit. And that's kind of where we're at until we up our feeder leagues and sort out a situation where they can do that.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And so I'm very conscious of time, so we're going to move swiftly on. So in third place then was Manchester Thunder. And as Lucy said earlier, given the talent that they lost after the 2022 season and the injuries they had to manage this season, I think they were pretty extraordinary. And you even referenced it earlier. We talk a lot around the foundations in Thunder and the dynasty that they've built, but I don't think enough credit necessarily gets given to Karen Gregg and the coaching setup that they've got there, who provides she provides such clarity and such direction in her coaching, I feel. So talk to us a little bit about how strong of a coach Karen is.
Yeah, I think Greg is doing an absolute brilliant job there. She retains players, so it's a good place. It's where people want to go. She gets people to want to come back to them if they've gone off and learnt their trade. I think she's really direct. I think her tactical game has been exceptional again this season. They know how to break things down. They know how to adjust their game as well. Yeah, I think she's one of the best coaches we've got in the country. And again, she's been allowed that time to do that, and she's had support over the years with different people, which I'm sure she'd speak highly about. And they do have it right from top to bottom. The way their region operates, the way the county operates, the way they've done it, and they've done it their way, has been really, really key. And they've been dominant for years. They've been one of the strongest counties over the years since back when I was playing age group stuff. So, I mean, you can't take the credit away from what Greg has done. And that's why players were able to come in and perform even when they didn't have their first string out.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we talk so much about the Thunder pathway and the strength of that and what they've done. And I think, even though they're a relatively new side, Pulse had a fantastic year this year. And obviously they were top of the ladder at the end of the regular season, winning 16 of their regular matches and conceding the fewest number of goals in the competition. But I do think they're obviously still very fresh as a franchise. I mean, they only debuted in the Super League in 2019. So in your opinion, what have they done right in the setup of the organisation to be able to rise to that level of success so quickly?
I think the big thing was getting their pathway right. There was a vision there from that season when she first came in to say, right, let's get some youngsters in there. And you only have to look at what they've that first photo of those youngsters to build on. They had Amanda Newton in their coaching, and there was loads of things that they did that went really, really well for them. And they built that team. They brought some experience in this year to help them get across the line. But I think I said it, you talked about Karen Gregg. She's been there, done it so many times. I think that was the first final Sam Bird's ever been in. And, it's an experience thing, how you control your emotions, the tactics, what you change. It's almost harder playing that well in the first half and going into half time up, because you're a bit like, oh, cool, yeah, keep doing more of the same. And I'm not necessarily saying that's what happened. I'm just saying you've got Vic Burgess and Liv Murphy supporting her that have been there, done that a million times, to be able to change things and do things, and players that have been in that position as well. So look, Pulse, if they retain those players, have got a bright future ahead, and actually have shown what you can do with a load of youngsters and why so many of them need to be brave about where they're playing and what they're doing. But it comes down to everybody. It's not just the performance of the players on the court. It's what you're doing as a coach. It's what you've learned across the season. It's how you use your impact players as well as you use your tactics. There's so much more to it. And I think they've definitely got so much right. It's now those finishing touches, and sadly that'll be a game that they'll always look at going, God, I wish we could have, because they've got to wait a whole load of season to be able to do it again. But you only grow and learn from those experiences.
Yeah, 100%. And I really think it was in the second half of that game, we saw the experience of Lightning really win out against the youth of Pulse. And actually, when we spoke to Sam Bird afterwards, she sort of alluded to the fact that maybe the changes didn't necessarily play out as she was hoping. But I think credit has to be given to Loughborough Lightning for the performance that they put out. I don't think anyone is too mad about Lightning winning their second Super League title. They were the highest scoring team in the competition, and they just blew Pulse away in the second half of that final. The second half was actually 28-17. It was really incredible, and just the emotion at the end of the game was so fantastic. What is so special about the culture and the team environment at Lightning, do you think?
I just think there's so many personal stories there. We know about that off the court that have been really, really huge. And that matters. That helps a group grow together. When you're faced with so much adversity, you join together. But I also think there's so many players that have been there, done that, and players that have come into their own. Like Fran Williams was just outstanding in that final. She wanted to win. Like, you could see that was written all over her face, and she gave that extra energy. And that again comes with time and experience, know what it's like to lose, know what it's like to be on the court. Just there's so much more to that group than just them being really talented. I think the coaches absolutely nailed it as well. That playing Pulse a few weeks before, they knew exactly what they needed to do. They needed to win more ball. Having Beth Cobden back really, really helped. They were absolutely quality in the end. And it was, I think, like you say, I don't think anybody minded them winning at all, because it was special for them as a whole unit.
Yeah, 100%. All the stories and all the narratives, like as well as everything that Nat's gone through, you know, Mary bringing Jackson over, there's just so much, and the redemption from last year's final as well, with Ella Clark going down, like absolutely no one is mad about them winning. But just a couple of questions on sort of the league as a whole before we let you go. This year, as we say, there was a significant divide between the top four sides. Just 22 games were decided by 5 goals or fewer, which equates to 24% of all games played. And I think when you compare that to ANZ, SSN, as always, you know, we're fair way off the mark in terms of how competitive our league is. And this has to be a priority for the Super League moving forward. And you mentioned on the broadcast that you would like to see the league go down to 8 teams and, as you said earlier, put in a coach development programme. Do you think that this would provide both a short-term and a long-term solution to making our league more competitive? And which one would you put in place first?
I think they have to come hand in hand, and you also have to redesign the programme. Prem is not a feeder league to the Super League at the moment. It's not good enough, and we need to be better at that. I think we need to do more investment into the universities, because at the minute, unless we've got major money to go into the clubs to run full-time programs where they're training every day, that's where the players are getting their access to full-time training, a lot of them in the crucial age of like 18, 21. So this is not just a quick, oh, we'll do this and it'll work, or we'll do this. We've got to lessen the number of teams, because we just don't have the quality across the board. And I hate saying this, it's performance sport. You know, bearing in mind, I was ranting about them getting 8 teams in the Sun Cup. They also only have 10 players. So that's 80 players across the league. And it's also unlimited imports. So that's your 80 top ones. And yet Australia still thrive every year. Yet we've got 10 teams of 15. There's 150 players. So
nearly double.
It's ridiculous. And it's not because I don't want to see people play or thrive. It's performance. It's the very best of the best. That's how it works. So first of all, I think we need to adjust that. Secondly, we need to get some more money in, but money only works if you've got the right programs in place. So we need a coach development program. But again, you can only make that operate if you've got a decent feeder league that runs underneath. That doesn't have to run all year round. That needs to be properly adjoined with the Super League, where coaches learn their trade, where those borderline players get opportunities, where youngsters get to play, where, you know, old ex-players perhaps come back in and give some experience, and you produce a feeder league that is worthwhile playing in and really helpful for the regions and areas going. And if we get to that point, we might be somewhere closer to where we want to go. And then if we haven't got the investment totally into the clubs, then the university stuff for me becomes really huge, because I reckon if you did a lot of stats around the players that played for the clubs, and I did this at Surrey Storm, it was something like through all our pathway over 6 years, 86% of our players went to university. Well, if that's the case, there's a huge group of players that are going there that you can get massive opportunity to get stuck into. But then my challenge would be, have we got the best coaches that understand how to technically upskill players in those programs? What does technically upskilling even look like? That comes back to the coach development program. So I know I rant and rave a lot about it, but this isn't just to throw the money at problem. It isn't me just being like, oh, just scrap a load of teams. And I also think if we want to increase the fan base, we need the games and the product to be better. So you lessen the teams, you're probably going to get a better product that can have more money put into it. And people understand, you know, how to get to games. More can be shown on TV because there's less to show, the season's shorter. There's all kinds of benefits coming to it. Yeah, and that's just kind of how I feel. And I'm more than happy to be challenged and talked about how else we're going to fix those problems. But they are problems and we can't keep hiding from it.
Yeah, but I kind of think it's not just going to be one solution that's going to solve everything. We're going to have to really roll a few ideas around and be bold with how we decide to move forward with the league. And I think, you know, some of the changes that we're starting to see hopefully will mean that things like this do come into place. And we've been, you know, vocal about the fact we think we should go down to 8 teams for sure. One question we did have was, how would you decide which teams to keep? Would it be geographical, or would you go more for those teams that are already partnered with the universities? If it sounds like that's quite a strong thing that you think is a good, important connection to keep.
Well, I don't think necessarily the connection automatic with the university is the problem. I think you've got to go with clubs who are commercially going to be able to run properly. So that means independently have kit deals and have venues that they can move into and have backing from supporting commercial funding, because it's not easy to run on your own. There's got to be an overall plan about how we're going to create a fan base as a sport, as brand netball, rather than an individual just trying to sell out their venue. There's so many things to do it. So I'm never going to say who I think should be in or out. There needs to be a proposal about what's the important things for our league, what's our overall plan, and that direction needs to become by whoever runs the league. So if it's England Netball, they need to decide what is the key things that they want to see. Is it fan base? Is it location? What are they trying to do? You can have 6 teams in the same area if you're doing joint venues. And I think that's the kind of thing we need to decide what is important and then actually build the product around it.
Yeah, no, I could not agree more. I think that's exactly the direction we need to be going in, and we just need to be confident and take those strides forwards and hopefully see some change, because our game is too valuable to not be shown to enough people. And so fantastic stuff, Tamsin. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I know you're extremely busy, so we really appreciate you taking the time, and always great to chat to you. Thank you very much again for your insight.
Thank you so much. I just can't believe the season's over, but I've absolutely loved it again. So
I know, I'm devastated as well. It's been great though, hasn't it? Thanks so much. Take care. Oh, what a fantastic conversation with Tamsin. I could literally speak to her all day. We barely even spoke about the finals because we just ran out of time completely. But she's just so insightful and knowledgeable. And I just love the bold vision that she has for what we want to do with the league. And I hope that, the powers that be will take notice and will be making those kind of bold changes, because I feel like everyone's crying out for netball to take the next step. And I think just in the context of the wider women's sport landscape, like we were talking about with Sue last week, like we just do have this real opportunity and we need to seize it and kind of push the sport forwards. And that comes from our strong domestic league and really building that up to be the best that it can be.
I mean, I think it's inevitable. It will happen. The question I have is, how long is it going to take us to get there? And that's the key thing for me, is that if we don't move fast enough, we're kind of going to miss the boat, and we're just going to get eclipsed by other sports, and we're going to lose a lot of talent to other sports, like we were chatting to Rob about as well. It's just, I can't help but come away from every single conversation with Tamsin feeling inspired and motivated and just want to go be a total boss bee and change the world.
And you have to think about as well, like she was there at the start of the Super League in 2005 when it was Super Cup, when it was really very, very early days, and then has been through all of that transition. I mean, the wealth of knowledge that she has, about our game and about our league is just second to none.
But my favorite thing about her is that she's not afraid to actually be a little bit controversial and to say things that might upset people, that might get their backs up, or that people disagree with. And she's like, challenge me. I welcome that. And I love the boldness of her vision. And I think she's extraordinary.
Yeah, I could not agree more. I hope you guys have enjoyed this conversation. Do let us know what you think. Thank you so much for listening as well to the last episode of season 3 of Qtr Time podcast. So do make sure you subscribe to the podcast and follow us on social media for the latest netball updates. Get involved in the conversation online by letting us know what you thought of the finals this weekend, which players have stood out for you, and what you think as well about the future of the Super League. Should we go down to 8 teams? Should we stick with 10? Should we go to 6 really brutally and get rid of everyone? I don't know. Let us know what you think as well. We always love to hear from you. And thank you so much, everyone who sends us lovely comments and Instagram DMs and messages. It's really honestly brightens our day every time we get one. So really thank you to everyone who's got in touch so far.
Yeah, it truly does. Slide into those DM, guys. We absolutely love it. But as you mentioned, this is our last episode of season 3 of the pod. But do not fear, we're not going to be going far. We're going to be bringing you exclusive coverage from the Netball World Cup. We're going to be out there in South Africa. So we're going to bring you all the netball goodness you could possibly hope for. Don't forget as well, Fast 5 is taking place this Friday. There are still tickets available. So do come down to London for a fab night of some incredible long bombs, outrageous intercepts, and plenty of glitter.
Oh, I cannot wait for that. Have you got our glitter sorted?
No,
please?
I'm going to get it.
Okay, right. You have to get that sorted. And in the lead up to the World Cup, which is next month, less than 50 days to go now, unbelievably. But we would really, really appreciate if you could take a moment to rate and review, as it really helps other people to find the podcast. And we just want to grow our audience as much as we can ahead of a huge summer of netty. If you enjoy listening to the pod, please do let us know. Do spread the word with all your netball pals so that even more people can get involved and start listening as well. And finally, don't forget to take advantage of our exclusive 15% discount with Lovell Netball by entering the code NETPOD15 at the checkout at lovellnetball.co.uk. Take care, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in this season, and we'll chat to you soon. Bye.
Bye.